Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the E.N.G Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Nick, with Compute Labs. For those of you just joining the podcast, I am Christian Gannon, the co-founder of E.N.G Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your software or tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. I understand Compute Labs is making it radically easier to scale AI infrastructure by turning compute into a financial asset. Backed by NVIDIA Inception, you offer flexible, risk-free access to high-performance GPUs with no upfront costs. Through tokenized assets like GNFTs and Compute Tokens, you're unlocking liquidity for GPU owners and giving AI teams on-demand access to everything from 4090s to Blackwell's B200s. It's a bold, future-ready model that's powering the next wave of AI innovation. Could you share a little bit more about your business, the services you offer, and your role within it?
Yeah, certainly. Christian, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be here. So, my name is Nick. I'm one of the co-founders of Compute Labs, and by role, I am a chief business officer. What that means is I handle most of the day-to-day business of speaking with data center operators, but also investors. And our business, in short, is to create fundraising opportunities for data centers so that they can use compute. What we really do is when we speak to data center operators, you can think of like neoclouds or just high performance computing operators or maybe like a smaller version of like CoreWeave and AWS. There's a ton of data centers out there, like over 5,000 in the United States alone, and it's growing every day. And the issue is that everybody needs more GPUs, everybody needs more compute resources. Oftentimes, a lot of these data center operators have just a queue of customers that they can't serve, primarily because they are already tapped out of capacity with their GPU resources, and now they need more. So when they have these needs of, hey, we have customers in queue, we have LOIs or just contracts pending, or we just know based on historical utilization that we can serve more customers if we get more capacity, we will talk to those data centers and say, okay, you need four more servers of H200s, you need a brand new server cluster of GB200s. Let's go out and help you. So we will package up their needs. So that will be their purchase order or server cluster specs. That will be including, maybe customer contracts or maybe their terms with a data center host, or their energy efficiency and whatnot. We'll package all that up into a nice investor package, and then we go and talk to our investor network who want to own the GPUs that the operator will be using. And what that allows is that when the GPU is being used, all the net revenue, the profits, the proceeds are going to the investor who is actually buying that GPU. So we're bridging this where the data center, they need GPU, the investor will go ahead and buy and own that GPU. Compute Labs manages all that for them and whatnot. But it's the investor who's allocating the capital to the GPU so that the data center now has an ability to scale and serve more of their customers. I hope that all that makes sense.
100%. And then a little bit follow up to that. I know that you use compute tokens and then GNFTs, which for some of our viewers, if you're unfamiliar, GPU NFTs. And from my familiarity with it, with it's kind of scarce, the NFTs represent ownership of real physical GPUs in digital form, correct? And then the compute tokens are used to rent or borrow the GPU power, correct?
Um, we actually don't offer that in our business right now, the ability to use the capacity. We actually go through our operators. So if, for example, we have a new customer who wants to use our compute, we're not building the marketplace that is on
Mhm.
demand for the compute utilization. We will direct that to the operator because they're the
Okay.
ones that are servicing the customers.
Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense. And then from the investor side, when I was going through the website, that's a myriad of people, right? I mean, that's from like me, I could invest in it, correct? Like just normal people who maybe aren't in the space, all the way up to large organizations. Is that correct?
That is correct. So, uh, our first offer that we are piloting today, it's already being deployed. It's just got shipped out this week, and now it's being installed right now. That is in a Toronto data center, so in Canada. So for this deal in particular, we are only allowing accredited investors because this deal in particular is a security.
Hmm.
And so for that, we require a institutional or sophisticated investor for the United States to UK and some other regions. For other regions, they don't have such restricting uh, guidelines or requirements for their investors. So we do accept retail from the regions where local securities laws permit. For the United States, though, that will only be for sophisticated accredited investors. Now, that being said, we are in the process of developing some products and tools that will be allowing retail involvement as well. So definitely stay tuned for that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, especially about the pilot as well. I mean, that's another great thing that's going on. And you said it started last week?
So it started a long time before that. Pilots always take a long time,
Right.
but the delivery of the hardware was officially received this week. So now it's in the process of being, making sure that the hardware is used, it's not, or usable, that it's
Mhm.
not dead on arrival, and making sure that it will be deployable in the next couple of weeks. So you got to do some testing and all that stuff.
Of course, and that makes a lot of sense. And kind of shifting a little bit, what kind of trends are you seeing in maybe the blockchain or the AI kind of infrastructure spaces right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So on the blockchain side, we definitely see RWAs growing.
Hmm.
We ourselves are a RWA project because our GPUs are tokenized, and we see a lot of derivatives, protocols, and projects that are trying to find additional utility or use cases on derivative issuance. So we ourselves, we are an issuer, meaning that we're not enabling any derivatives features. We'll allow partners to do that.
Hmm.
But it's really interesting that there's just more and more upcoming derivatives enablers out there, which is really exciting. That helps our project out. We're grateful for that. Um, yeah, and otherwise, in terms of AI, there's just a lot of growing trend of additional demand. AI is just growing. It's becoming uh, better and better. I mean, if we've seen what's going on with Google with its most recent announcement of VO3, man, like
Oh
AI is
yeah,
just becoming better, and the compute necessity or requirements for that is just getting stronger. So growing trend of compute need.
100%. And right now, in this kind of landscape that we're talking about, what's kind of making it more challenging or on the flip side, easier to operate in right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question as well. So the challenges that we're experiencing is what kind of investors are comfortable with investing in GPUs or compute as a alternative asset. It's interesting because while you and I were probably using ChatGPT or some type of model nearly every
Mm.
day, it's a part of our normal workflow, and we know that this industry is growing. Uh, Investors know the same, but it's still new, and it's a different type of investment for them. So it takes so much education for them to get comfortable with this. Uh, so one issue is the market needs mass education. We're actually fortunate that there's a number of different compute projects out there facilitating and helping us with the education as well. But beyond that, then of course there's okay, let's say we're now servicing our investors, we're selling them these GPU investment products. Then there's a difference between serving a Web2 investor and a Web3 investor. A
Hmm.
Web2 investor is very traditional. If we tell them that this is an RWA project, they will get scared. They don't know what RWA
Right.
means. If we tell them that blockchain is powering, they'll be like, I don't know what that means. And
Right.
that's just another hurdle that we are going through. And we're trying to serve the customers, our investors, but also making sure that they're comfortable with their choice of investment. And on the Web3 side, what's really interesting is that Web3 investors are totally comfortable with NFTs and RWA and receiving yield in the form of USDC. However, the yield, or rather the return profiles, are not as attractive. And let me just back up on that for a
Hmm.
second. The return profiles we're looking at on these GPU investments, we are targeting a minimum of 20% per project. So that's a really strong investment. That's way more than a traditional S&P 500.
Right.
We have some offers that are going like 40, 50, 60% IRR, just depends on the deal.
Hmm.
That still isn't enough for a Web3 investor because they're anticipating a 10x or a 20x with a traditional like speculative token. So it's a totally different type of investment, requires education both in the Web3 investors and Web2 investors. And hey, it's just a point of when you educate more time, it'll get done. It'll resolve itself.
100%. And kind of on the topic, but a little bit off topic as well. We've had a couple of the agentic AI companies come on and
Ooh.
kind of say similar things, maybe not exactly in the space of
Sure.
blockchain, right? But just more in the sense of adoption rates are so slow when it comes to the investing side of it. And then on the other side, which kind of leads into my next question, is how do you market that above all of the rest of the agents that are out there that are being created right now? Just the depth and like the leverage that you have on your competitors. And so my question, I guess, right now is I know that you're still kind of in the pilot stage and early stages of it, but how do you kind of plan on reaching out to new clients and acquiring them going into the future?
Yeah, another good question. And to me, I summarize that question as uh, how are you building a sales pipeline and how are you educating your clients? So for number one, we are building marketing collateral educational content that is trying to make things simple. And then we find analogies that will make sense for them. So for example, when we speak to a real estate investor, a traditional Web2 real estate investor, we ask them first, are you familiar with real estate syndication? Naturally, they'll say yes.
Hmm.
But then we say to them, we are doing the same exact thing, same model. However, it's for GPUs and hardware. And that makes sense to them. So we're trying to speak their language and making sure that they have something to compare to. And not only can they compare the business model, the way that cash flow and money works, but beyond that, also just what kind of return profile, because our returns are supposed to be better than real estate. And then beyond that, we do a lot of education on what are these hardware products that they're purchasing? What are they used for? What are their capabilities? We'll also educate on what are similar products doing with the secondary market, with their depreciation, things like that. When we're in the early stage as we are, we have incredible products. It's just traction is everything. And until we have traction that is hitting them the right way, all we can do is provide them analogies and make things so simple that it'd be hard for them to say no.
Of course. And I think I'm really glad you mentioned that and shared that as well, because I think that's a huge point for people that are starting up, especially targeting a multitude of different verticals, right? Of being able to speak their language, number one, and then also hit a pain point or something that would make them interested, right? Like those kind of go hand in hand. So thank you so much for sharing that. And moving to kind of maybe the more personal side of things, what does your kind of day to day look like as a co-founder right now and a BSO?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So, my day to day is getting a flood of Slack messages, Telegram messages, emails, LinkedIn messages, and then trying to uh, go through the messy weave and determine, all right, which of these do I have time to respond to? Which of these can I deprioritize? Things like that. Uh, Most of the time, I don't even have the ability to. Uh, Sit down and let me deprioritize this and that. But we're getting there. I think most of my day to day is talking to operators, so data centers that need capital, need GPU, and then the opposite side is talking to investors to make sure that there are interest and capital allocators who want to go and help these data centers. Um, it is a lot of work, and I mean,
Of course.
I've always heard that startups are a lot. You don't know it until you are in it.
Definitely, definitely. And trust me, I can vouch for you on my end too, being a part of a startup. But thank you for sharing. And when we think about success today, what metrics really matter to you and the Compute Labs team right now?
Yeah, fantastic question as well. So for us, our metrics are more about how much capital can we get, either committed or soft committed, so that we can increase our TVO and bring that liquidity and capital to data centers. Next, beyond that, the number of data center operators that we can help. Uh, and then on a more specific, it would be the return profile of what these investments are looking like for our investors, because we got to make sure that these are good, strong investments that investors will like and want to come back to.
Of course, of course. And kind of looking ahead, I know that we talked about a little bit down the road more to the like consumer side, like me or someone else that might want to invest in this. What's kind of next for Compute Labs in the next 6 to 12 months? Are there any big product features or launches on the roadmap?
Let's see. So we've had some fun with releasing a our own model of a agentic newsletter bot, which is really fun.
That's awesome.
Um, it's called Sam Altbot on X, so feel free to look at that. It's a really fun little bot. Beyond that, we are also coming out with a yield game called Yield Wars, which we're really excited about. And this Yield Wars game that we're releasing is actually supposed to be how do I put it? Educate the market on what it is to invest into GPUs, and it's supposed to simulate all that. And the community will also receive awards for participating. And then beyond that, we'll have a significant amount of GPU clusters for fundraising. Today, we are raising for 6 different operators, 6 different GPU clusters, with a amount up to $200 million in our pipeline. And then beyond that, just getting more investors.
Of course. Thank you for so much for sharing, and especially at the depth that you did. And kind of going into my last question, it's a tough one, but it's a fun one. Hypothetically, if you had a magic wand and could solve just one problem within your business, what would that be?
That's a really good question. If I could solve any problem within our business with a magic wand, it would be the problem of uh, investor education, or rather, I guess, uh, close deals with investors so that we can bring all that capital and liquidity to our data center partners.
Of course, of course. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a big struggle right now across the board in
Yeah,
software and tech industries is
true.
number
Market.
one, getting investors, number two, getting clients, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
huge problem. That's partially why I restarted E.N.G too. But if people want to connect with you or learn more about what Compute Labs is doing, where could they go and how could they connect?
Yeah, so we're on X, we're on LinkedIn. My email is nick@computelabs.ai. Uh, and yeah, I think LinkedIn I'm very active, so there I'm good. But also, yeah, Exit. Oh, also we have a Discord and Telegram that helps too.
Perfect. I will leave the links to the description of Nick's LinkedIn and the X profile, as well as the Discord and the Telegram if you guys are interested in joining and kind of seeing what's going on the roadmap and what gets released in the future, especially if you're in a space like mine. Like I'm very interested in being invested in some of these projects down the line. So I'll definitely be in there hanging out. So I highly recommend you guys check out Compute Labs and the incredible things they're doing in the space. But other than that, thank you again, Nick, for your time and insights today, and we'll see you guys on the next podcast.